I talk an awful lot about positioning in my videos, and something that I consistently say is that you should be supporting the side you spawn at. If you spawned on the C flank, you should go to the C flank. If you spawn on the A flank, you should go there. And if you spawn mid, you should try and reinforce whichever side you think is going to need the most help from you, or to even just play in the middle and get some alternative angles, that kind of thing. However, sometimes that just doesn't work. And that's an unfortunate case of your team just running away from a flank, or perhaps they all die very, very quickly. I think we've all had this happen to us before where the one DD on our flank dies very quickly, and then we're not sure what to do because, well, we should be supporting that flank. We know that. That's where we spawned, and that's the side that we should be helping. But it's really impossible to help sometimes when you don't have spotting and the enemy team is able to push in, take control of some really important islands, and then they can spam over them without you being able to do anything. And honestly, this game is going to look a little bit like that, where our Henry has already clearly left, our Monty is on his way to leaving, and then it's just an Austin, myself, and a Gearing left on this flank. And that Gearing doesn't look like he's going to last too long given his health pool so far and the positioning of the enemy team. We already know based on the minimap, as we should always be looking at the minimap to reinforce our decision making and get some information, right? We have Des Moines, Smolensk, Yamato, and Montana here. We know all of that is here. The other thing we know is that they have a DD over here somewhere because he's stalling the cap, right? So something has to be in the cap, so they definitely have 5 ships here, at least. And if the carrier decides to keep coming after us, then they'll have that support as well in spotting and some crossfires and some damage that way. So it's not looking so good at the moment for us. So we really do need to play safe, play smart, and not give up this flank too easily. But also we can't overcommit here. This is a losing kind of scenario. And learning to recognize these scenarios, I think, is going to help you do better in games and help you win more matches. The key is going to be not running away completely. And in fact, there is the Summers that we thought would be there given that the cap was stalled. Try and get a hit into him, but honestly, he's not going to stay spotted for long since our DD is already dead. And looking at the positioning of this Smolensk and Yamato, they for sure have control of the 9-10 lines, and they have control of C now. There's nothing we can do. This is given up. So I talked about it a little bit in one of my cruisers are really good video. I think it was the follow-up second video where I talked about positioning in your cruiser and using some basic starting positions on maps and then having these fallback islands. And we're going to use some fallback islands in this game. I'm not going to use this close one here that this Austin and I are right next to. We're actually going to go back to where the carrier is. And I know that seems a little bit extreme, but what people generally want to do when they take control of A or C is they want to kill everyone there and then push across B for free, right? As soon as you're able to get that free push into the B cap, you've pretty much won, assuming your team has done a decent job of stalling the team on whichever flank you haven't been able to push through. So in this case, it would be A, right? The enemy team is doing a reasonable job of stalling our team. Our team is kind of stuck behind islands in the north of A. They haven't been able to push through yet. And assuming the enemy team was able to kill myself and this Austin up here in the north, I mean, the Monty and the Henry are kind of in the middle of nowhere there in B. We don't know how long they're going to end up lasting, but we're providing a pretty good crossfire right now. That is the key here. That is the goal of the enemy team, is to push into B, and we're making it difficult for them to do that because they'll have to angle to someone. They can't just ignore me because, well, I'm going to be shooting at them as I'm running away. And they can't ignore my team in A or B because, well, they're trying to push into that, and that's their goal. That's their objective to get. So that allows us to kill that Des Moines there. He got caught in a crossfire in a position where he pushed up a little bit too aggressively and got punished for that. So now we have a full health Smolensk to deal with, as well as a DD, a Yamato, and a Montana. We're not really sure where they're at, but it really is important for me to stay up here. I will admit I was considering doubling back towards the 8-9 line. You can see the island up there offers a really good spot to crossfire even further at a sharper, more steep angle. But I decided against that, and I'm just going to go play here with the carrier. The Summers is likely in the B cap at the moment, so we know we likely don't have to deal with him from here. All we're dealing with is the battleships and the Smolensk. So they're going to kill our carrier very quickly. That's why I tell him to get back at this point. I don't want to overuse commands like that. It gets annoying, but I will use it every once in a while if there's something important. And there's a lot for a carrier to think about because he can be anywhere on the map at any time. He's probably thinking where he can be used best. So sometimes the positioning of a carrier is a little bit tricky as you get to these mid games that are a little bit more obscure, where your team gives up an entire flank by the 7-minute mark. And in fact, both the Montana and the Yamato are here. So we need to stall them as long as we possibly can, but we can't just take them on alone. Our team is still north of A, stalled out, like I mentioned earlier. And this is where we're going to kind of just fight from here. We don't really have to worry about torpedoes, for now at least, because that Summers is pretty far away and it's going to take them a while to come back here. You'll notice I've swapped to HE. This is something you should be doing in your battleships, assuming you don't overmatch. If you're shooting AP at a bow-on battleship at these ranges, you're really relying on RNG to hit some magical salvo into their superstructure. This is just not reliable damage, and honestly, if you have anybody supporting you in focusing down a battleship, they'll be grateful of you spamming HE using damage controls, and maybe some torpedoes come in and hit them and flood them, or some of your DDs, cruisers with higher fire chance and fire starting potential can get more permanent fires, that kind of thing. But this is a weird position for a battleship. This is a position that you would often find as where noobs would play, or somebody who is just not looking or interested in contributing or helping win the gameplay. But not always. I think in this case, it was a good decision for me to come back here. If I didn't, I likely would have been torped by that Summers as we were crossing towards the A cap, or I would have fallen back completely to A cap and just bubbled up with my team. And you see a lot of games lost in that way, where you give up 3/4 of the map if you cut the map into quarters. Give up 3/4, you get crossfired to death, and you lose, guaranteed. And this game is pretty close still. Holding back this Monty and this Yamato is going to be a big deal. And I want to bring this up because I often talk about this pushing and supporting, like I mentioned. And sometimes supporting means running away, living to fight another battle, right? That is sometimes what it means. So being in this position is giving my team an opportunity to win the game or help win the game. If I had thrown my ship away at sea, we wouldn't have had a battleship back here to help crossfire. We wouldn't have had this potential stalling or stopping force that myself and the CV and maybe some of the extra firepower from some of the guys at A would be able to deal with this Montana and the Yamato. You'll notice the Montana pushing much more aggressively than the Yamato was. So I put the island between myself and the Yamato, taking a bit more of a 1v1 with this Montana. Of course, it's not really a fair 1v1 since I have the carrier helping me. And our secondaries are going to work, but they're not doing too much damage. It really is the main guns that you're looking for. Monty, of course, knows to switch to HE when you're fighting an angled battleship, and does some okay damage, starts a fire, but we did get lucky getting a Citadel there into his somewhat angled ship. And now that we've dealt with that, this Yamato is very alone. So we can kind of push out and try to deal with him, although a smoke screen starts popping up, and of course that's the Smolensk in the middle of the cap. A very strong position, especially since that Summers is definitely in the area spotting for him. But I think it's still important that we make this push right now because our team appears to be pushing through A, or at least getting a little more aggressive in those areas. And our CV unfortunately goes down, but maybe we can bring this back and do it without the aircraft support. It's going to be a little bit tricky, but I think it's possible. And we actually end up surprising this Summers. I don't think he expected me to push so aggressively. Now, it's important to take some pretty drastic actions when you surprise a DD. And I'll admit I got lucky here, for sure. But it's important that I did take that turn. If I was stuck between a Yamato, a Summers, and a Smolensk in smoke spamming with HE, I would die very, 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 very quickly. I think we all know that. So my choice was risk dying to the torpedoes or guaranteed dying to the Yamato, Smolensk, and Summers combination. So I decided to take the risk that might pay off if I get lucky, and I did. So we end up with half our HP and hopefully going to be able to survive this one. And again, living to fight another day. I probably should have known that Summers was there. I probably shouldn't have pushed into a Smolensk smoke, especially with a Yamato crossfiring. That's something that I should have recognized beforehand, before I even pushed out from the island and said, no, I don't want to push bow into this. But I didn't, and that was a mistake, but fortunately I didn't get punished for it. And you can see we're already up to 116,000 damage, and we've done a pretty reasonable job of delaying and making it as hard on the enemy team as possible to push through and get these really strong crossfires that they're looking for. Because that's what they were looking for. They were looking to get those massive broadside shots into our guys north of A. And that's what we needed to stop. We have a ton of cruisers here. And of course, a Montana and a Yamato getting broadsides to all those cruisers, that would have been a very, very quick game, assuming they had gotten into a range where they could land some pretty reliable hits. But as it stands, we've kind of pulled things back. We've got a lot more kills, but we do need to get on the caps here. And at least the points are a little bit even right now. That's one of the nice things about getting a lot of kills is you don't need the caps as long as you're getting all those kills. So we have a bit of time to push in and just a Smolensk left in A. So our team is going to clean that up and we're just going to push towards B. I think... No, I get one more salvo in. I'll skip the rest of it. It pretty much ends at like this, where our team just pushes through to B, and we get C-cap. But a bit of an odd game. I usually post games where I'm playing aggressively, I'm able to brawl, and I think those are more fun and more interesting games to watch and for myself to play. I really enjoy that a lot more. But I think it's important to see the value in not pushing sometimes and taking up obscure, weird positions in the right scenarios, and learning to recognize those scenarios, I think, is going to result in better games for more of you. It's not something I want to do, that, just run to the back of the map. That's not the goal of any game I'm playing. That feels like a weird scenario where I click battle and then turn around and run. But some matches are like that, and it is somewhat rewarding to win games like this, where it feels like you made the correct decisions in the fights and managed to outmaneuver and outposition the enemy team. Not always is it going to work. A lot of times you're going to end up losing games like that, where you just completely collapse an entire flank in the first 5 to 7 minutes. But sometimes you are capable of pulling them back and actually winning them. So I think that was an interesting game. Let me know what you think about that one. Maybe I'll post a few more tactical ones that aren't as action-oriented and try and explain some of the thought process. But it was still a really good game. 150k, not bad. Now, the Ohio is one of those ships where you can run a lot of different builds on it. It's a pretty flexible ship. But this is what I'm running currently. It is more of a brawling-focused build. You can see we're not taking concealment. We're taking the secondary upgrades instead. We're trying to get use out of our secondaries. I'll be honest, it is pretty difficult to get in secondary range these days, so maybe you'd even consider going concealment and trying to get those shots out of concealment, those surprise shots into people more. As well, concealment can help you push in or survive when you're trying to kite away a little easier if you go dark. Something I have been considering is actually swapping from Improved Repair Party and Vigilance over to AA Defense and Anti-Submarine Warfare. I'm trying to get as much out of my AA as possible. That would allow me to push in a few more games where there's aircraft carriers around, and the AA, when you go the full build, including auxiliary armaments, isn't too bad. I might even consider running a fighter as a little extra deterrent. I'm not sure about that one. That's something I'm going to experiment with here in the future. It's kind of an idea that has popped in my head a little more recently. You'll notice these builds if you look at past videos on Ohio. They often do change as I try and tinker with the build, trying to make the best brawling or pushing build possible. But this is what I've been running since the Commander update or change in 10.7 back in August. And I think it works pretty well, but I'm not sure if it's quite the best yet. That's where you got to tinker with it and figure out what works best for you. That's the Ohio. This is a very, very good ship if you're looking to get a Research Bureau ship. It's expensive, takes a long time to get, but it is one of the better battleships in the entire game, and works good at range, works good at mid-range, works good at close range. It's just good in a lot of scenarios, and I think that's really what you're looking for out of a random battles battleship. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.